The champagne glass struck the marble floor 3 seconds after Adriano Moretti told 400 guests he had never loved his pregnant wife. It broke beneath the stage in the Moretti Grand Ballroom, scattering crystal across the reflection of Isabella Romano Moretti's ivory gown. The string orchestra stopped in the middle of a note. Judges, senators, bankers, actors, and the grey-haired representatives of old families turned toward the woman whose 10th wedding anniversary they had come to celebrate. Isabella stood 7 months pregnant beneath a screen filled with photographs of her marriage. One hand rested over the daughter moving beneath her heart. The other remained loose at her side. Adriano held the microphone as if he were closing a business agreement. "I have decided to return to Bianca Ricci," he said. "The truth is that I never truly loved Isabella. This marriage should never have happened." Behind him appeared a photograph from their wedding day. Adriano was smiling at a 24-year-old Isabella as though no other person existed. The cruelty of the image was so precise that several guests lowered their eyes. Everyone waited for her to cry. Adriano waited too. Instead, Isabella looked at the man she had protected, advised, and loved for 10 years. Then she nodded once. "If that is truly what you want," she said softly, "then I hope you find it." She walked out while the anniversary candles still burned. Her marriage had not ended on that stage. It had ended over hundreds of ordinary days, every dinner abandoned for a telephone call, every promise postponed, every medical appointment attended alone. Tonight was only the funeral. Outside, autumn air touched her face. Her daughter shifted beneath her palm. "You're safe," Isabella whispered. Far above her, Adriano remained beneath the chandeliers, believing he had finally set himself free. He did not know that before sunrise, every port, account, and protected system beneath the Moretti name would answer to the woman he had just humiliated. The black-armored sedan carried Isabella through the iron gates of the Moretti estate shortly after midnight. She never looked back at the ballroom lights. Her driver, Paolo, asked twice whether she wanted a doctor. Both times she said no. Her pulse was steady. The child was moving. Pain was not an emergency simply because other people were afraid to witness it. The mansion had been decorated for the anniversary. White lilies climbed the staircase. Silver ribbons framed a portrait of Adriano and Isabella beside the library doors. In the photograph, his arm rested around her waist, and she leaned into him with the unguarded trust of a woman who had not yet learned that neglect could be delivered in expensive rooms. Isabella turned the frame face down. Upstairs, warm light spilled from the nursery. Cream walls surrounded a white crib, shelves of storybooks, and a stuffed rabbit with one ear slightly lower than the other. Isabella had sewn that ear 3 weeks earlier after discovering a loose seam. Adriano had promised to help choose the child's name that evening. He had never come home. She lifted the rabbit and pressed it against her chest. "You will never have to earn someone's presence," she told her daughter. "I promise." Then she carried the rabbit into the master bedroom and opened the antique mahogany cabinet that had belonged to her father, Vittorio Romano. Adriano had disliked the cabinet. It was too dark for the room, too old for the modern estate, too ordinary to justify the space it occupied. He had suggested replacing it 4 times. He had never asked why Isabella refused. Her fingers found the brass key beneath the upper shelf. The hidden compartment opened with a metallic click. Inside rested a black fireproof case, 6 leather journals, and a cream envelope written in her father's precise hand. Open only when absolutely necessary. Isabella broke the seal. The first page held no sentimental farewell. Vittorio Romano had never confused love with softness. "My dearest Isabella, if you are reading this, someone has mistaken your silence for surrender." Beneath the letter lay the original charter of the Romano Continuity Trust, a silver data key, a stamped corporate seal, and a single-page authorization form. Isabella read only long enough to confirm what she already knew. Then she signed her name once. A knock sounded behind her. Lucia Belandi entered wearing a charcoal coat over her evening dress. At 63, Lucia had spent most of her life protecting Romano assets from men who believed a woman inherited wealth only so that a husband could use it. She had been Isabella's father's attorney, then Isabella's godmother, and for the past decade the only person who knew exactly how much of Moretti capital had never belonged to Adriano. Lucia placed a leather folder on the desk. "The council is calling an emergency session," she said. "Already?" "Your husband chose a stage filled with bankers. News travels quickly when humiliation affects collateral." Isabella looked down at the authorization. "I don't want the company destroyed." "This does not destroy it. It prevents Adriano from moving anything until we know what he has promised and to whom." "How bad is it?" Lucia's silence answered before her words did. 3 months ago, Adriano used part of Port Aurelia to secure a new acquisition. The trust never approved it. 2 weeks ago, someone tried to authenticate your consent with a copied seal. Isabella's hand stopped above the page. "Why wasn't I told?" "Because I intercepted it before it cleared, and because you were carrying a child while trying to save a marriage alone. I intended to bring you proof after tonight." "Proof of what?" Lucia opened the folder. On top was a photograph of Bianca leaving a private office owned by Salvatore Vascari, Adriano's most patient rival. Isabella studied the image without changing expression. "Does Adriano know?" "I don't know." "Then we do not assume he is innocent, and we do not assume he is involved. We verify." Lucia watched her for a moment. "Your father used to say that exact sentence. My father also distrusted every man who called appetite a strategy." Isabella signed the emergency authorization. The silver key flashed once as Lucia inserted it into the secure terminal built inside the case. At 2:13 in the morning, the Romano Continuity Trust stopped every attempt to sell, borrow against, or expand the assets Isabella controlled. Salaries continued. Ships already at sea continued. Hospitals, pension accounts, and employee benefits continued. Only Adriano's ability to move the empire without her knowledge stopped. Lucia closed the terminal. "By breakfast, he will think you attacked him. Then breakfast will be the first time in 10 years he notices what I have done." Isabella removed her wedding ring and placed it inside the cream envelope with her father's letter. She did not cry until she returned to the nursery and found the name book still open on the chair. Adriano had circled Sophia 6 months earlier. That small mark broke what the ballroom could not. She sat on the carpet beside the crib, held the stuffed rabbit against her stomach, and allowed herself exactly 10 minutes to mourn the life she had believed her daughter would inherit. Then she washed her face, called an independent attorney, and began building a different one. Morning sunlight spread across the glass walls of Adriano's penthouse. Bianca stood barefoot beside the marble counter, pouring coffee into 2 porcelain cups. She wore his white shirt and the satisfied expression of someone who believed a locked door had finally opened. "You did it," she said. Adriano loosened his collar. He had not slept. The calmness in Isabella's face followed him each time he closed his eyes. "It should have happened years ago." Bianca crossed the room and put a cup into his hand. "Now we can stop pretending." He looked over the city he believed he controlled. The Moretti name covered towers, ships, banks, and private security vehicles. He had spent 20 years making it impossible to ignore. Bianca wrapped her arms around him from behind. "Now everything belongs to us," she whispered. His telephone rang before he could answer. Matteo Caruso's name appeared on the screen. "We have a problem," Matteo said without greeting. "What kind?" "The Romano Trust froze every unapproved transfer and expansion signed in the past 18 months. Legal is waiting. The council meets at 10. Bianca's arms slowly fell from Adriano's waist. "That trust is ceremonial," he said. "It was ceremonial while Isabella allowed it to be." Adriano turned toward Bianca. For 1 second, something unreadable crossed her face. Then concern replaced it. "Go," she said. "Fix this." At 8:15, the executive conference room at Moretti Capital was silent enough to hear the ventilation system. Nobody touched the coffee. A projection of the company's holdings covered the far wall, but half the lines were now red. Adriano entered, with Matteo beside him. "Tell me what she stopped." Chief Counsel Aaron Vale opened a binder. "Nothing that keeps people paid or ships moving. She stopped your ability to sell, pledge, or expand without her approval. Then override it." Vale did not move. "You cannot override the owner." Adriano stared at him. The screen changed. Beneath the Moretti capital structure appeared another name, Romano Continuity Trust. Vale pointed to the red foundation beneath the chart. The trust owns the land beneath the ports and the systems that let the fleet and accounts operate. Moretti Capital uses them. It does not own them. My wife owns the foundation of my company? Your wife is the controlling beneficiary. Without her assets, the empire cannot function. Adriano looked toward Matteo. You knew? He knew Vittorio Romano supplied the foundation. Did not know ownership never transferred. Neither did you, because you signed the summary and left the agreement unread. The rebuke would have cost another man his position. Matteo delivered it without lowering his eyes. Adriano turned back to the screen. Why now? Vale slid a document across the table. Someone pledged a Romano asset using your account and a copy of Mrs. Moretti's seal. Her verified signature is missing. Who submitted it? It entered through your private authorization account. The room seemed to contract. Adriano remembered a night 6 weeks earlier. Bianca had been in his office. He had left his tablet unlocked while taking a call. When he returned, she was standing beside the window with 2 glasses of wine. He pushed the memory away because accepting it would require accepting too many other things at once. Until the council meets, nothing disputed moves, Vale said. Adriano looked again at the red lines spreading beneath his name. For years, he had treated Isabella's family legacy as beautiful old stone beneath the modern tower he built. He had never considered that removing it might bring the tower down. At the same moment, across the city, Isabella sat before a mirror while Lucia fastened the final button of her black dress. You do not have to attend, Lucia said. If I stay home, they will discuss my property, my marriage, and my daughter as if none of us can speak. Some of those men will blame you for embarrassing Adriano. Isabella met her own reflection. He used a microphone. I used a contract. Only one of us planned an audience. Before leaving, she opened the nursery door once more. The stuffed rabbit waited in the crib. She touched its repaired ear, then closed the door behind her. Black vehicles climbed toward the old Moretti fortress, where the family council met beneath portraits of men who had mistaken longevity for wisdom. When Isabella entered the chamber, every conversation stopped. She wore no diamonds. No bodyguards surrounded her. One hand rested on the curve of her pregnancy, and Lucia walked 1 pace behind, carrying the original trust charter. Adriano stood at the opposite end of the table. His expression contained the anger of a man who had spent the morning discovering that certainty was not evidence. Council Chairman Enzo Caruso rose. We are here to determine whether the Romano suspension is valid and what danger it creates for the organization. Lucia placed 1 document before each member. The suspension is valid, she said. The more useful question is what danger made it necessary. The explanation took less than a minute. Vittorio Romano had supplied the assets Moretti Capital needed to function, but ownership had remained with Isabella's trust. Adriano had been allowed to use the foundation. He had never owned it. Someone had now tried to pledge part of it with a false seal. Adriano leaned forward. I built this company. You expanded it, Lucia replied. There is a difference. He looked at Isabella. You knew you could do this? Yes. For how long? Since my father died. And you never told me. For the first time, she met his eyes. You never asked what he left me. You asked whether the ports could support your expansion. You asked whether Lucia could make the licenses faster. You asked me to smile beside you while investors called the merger a Moretti victory. But no, Adriano. You never asked what belonged to me. The words landed more heavily because she did not raise her voice. One council member warned that thousands of employees could lose their work. That is why I stopped. Only the transactions no one explained to me, Isabella said. The ships keep moving. The workers keep getting paid. Another man looked toward Adriano. Did you authorize the North Quay pledge? Adriano's gaze moved to the copied seal. My account authorized it. I did not know Isabella's consent was false. That is not an answer, Isabella said. His jaw tightened. Did you approve using Romano assets as collateral? I approved the acquisition structure presented to me, without reading what you were pledging. Silence spread around the table. Adriano had used that defense for years. Advisors summarized. Attorneys reviewed. He made decisions too large to examine. Until that moment, nobody had forced him to hear what the defense meant. I chose power before understanding its cost. Lucia placed a photograph beside the false authorization. Bianca leaving Vascari house. Several council members reacted immediately. Salvatore Vascari was the only rival powerful enough to profit from a Moretti collapse. Adriano picked up the photograph. When was this taken? 9 days ago, Lucia said. This proves a meeting, not conspiracy. Correct, Isabella said. Which is why there will be an independent audit instead of an execution based on wounded pride. More than one man looked away. Chairman Caruso folded his hands. What do you require? An independent audit, every communication preserved, and Adriano removed from the disputed assets until we know the truth. Existing operations continue. No innocent family pays for what happened between us. Adriano stared at her. You intend to remove me from my own company. I intend to find out whether someone used your arrogance to enter mine. No one defended him. The council approved the audit by 11 votes to 2. As the chamber emptied, Adriano remained beside the table holding Bianca's photograph. Isabella gathered her papers slowly. When she passed him, he spoke without looking up. Did you plan this before the gala? She stopped. I planned a nursery, she said. You planned the rest. Rain began before sunset. It struck the library windows of the Moretti estate while Isabella sat before the fire with her father's first journal open in her lap. She had read only 3 pages when the door opened. Adriano entered without waiting for permission. We need to talk. She closed the journal. You lost the right to enter my room as though every door belongs to you. He stopped. For several seconds, anger and shame fought visibly across his face. Then he stepped back into the corridor, knocked once, and waited. May I come in? For 10 minutes. That correction, small and almost absurd after a decade of marriage, unsettled him more than the council vote. He entered and remained standing. How much of my life did you hide from me? Your life? The trust, the ports, the systems. Those were not your life, Adriano. They were assets you used. We built the empire together. My father built its foundation. I gave you permission to build walls. You became so impressed by their height that you forgot to ask what held them up. He moved toward the fire. Why stay silent for 10 years if you believed I was neglecting you? Pain rose in Isabella's chest, but her voice remained steady. I was not silent. I asked you to come home. I asked you to attend appointments. I asked you to take 1 week without meetings. I told you I ate dinner alone. I told you I was frightened when the doctor ordered more tests. You heard every word and answered as though my loneliness were a scheduling problem. I was building security for our family. No. You were building proof that no one could ever make you feel powerless again. We were simply expected to live inside it. He looked down at the journal. I thought I gave you everything. You gave me houses I slept in alone. You gave me jewelry chosen by assistants. You gave me guards who knew where I was when my husband did not. She placed both hands over her daughter. When I learned there was a complication with the pregnancy, I sat in St. Gabriel for 3 hours. You called your assistant before you called me. I called as soon as the meeting ended. Exactly. The single word removed every excuse he had prepared. Adriano reached into his pocket. His wedding ring lay in his palm. He had stopped wearing it after Bianca returned, claiming the metal distracted him during meetings. Isabella had pretended to believe him. I made a terrible mistake, he said. A mistake happens once. You made choices every day. Bianca may have used me. That does not make me less betrayed. I know. Do you? Because you came here asking what I hid, not what you destroyed. For the first time since he entered, Adriano had no answer. Isabella removed her ring from the chain around her neck. She had carried it there since the nursery because a part of her had not been ready to place it in a drawer. She set it on the table between them. I loved you, she said. That is why this hurts. Hope and grief appeared together in his expression. Loved? Tomorrow my attorney files for divorce. The rain seemed louder. Isabella, do not confuse my refusal to destroy the company with a willingness to save our marriage. One decision protects thousands of people, the other protects me. And our daughter? You will have the opportunity to become her father. You will not use her to remain my husband." His eyes moved to the ring. "What do you want me to do?" "Tell the truth before the audit finds it for you." The 10 minutes had ended. Adriano walked out without touching the ring. In the corridor, he found Matteo waiting beside the staircase. "Bianca is gone," Matteo said. Adriano looked toward him. "Her penthouse is empty. Her telephone was left in the sink. The private office server shows a download from your account at 1:30 this morning, while you were still at the gala. What did she take? Port security rotations, Romano license maps, and every route planned for the next 6 weeks." Adriano turned back toward the closed library door. For the first time, he understood that the public destruction of his marriage might not have been the end of Bianca's plan. It might have been the opening move. Adriano reached Bianca's penthouse 12 minutes after midnight with Matteo and 4 security officers behind him. The door was unlocked. Inside, every surface had been wiped clean. Dresses were gone from the closet, medicine removed from the bathroom, framed photographs taken from the bedroom. Only the coffee cup she had used that morning remained on the kitchen counter. Beside it lay Adriano's anniversary gift to her, a diamond bracelet he had purchased while Isabella attended a prenatal appointment alone. He stared at it until Matteo placed a tablet on the counter. "We recovered part of the download log. Bianca copied more than roots. She took the names of every council member who supported Romano oversight, the medical schedule from the estate security system, and the access protocol for the old archive beneath Port Aurelia." Adriano looked up sharply. "Medical schedule?" "Isabella's appointments." The room changed around him. Until that moment, the theft had still belonged to the category he understood. Leverage, assets, territory, pride. The inclusion of Isabella's medical schedule gave it a different shape. Double the estate guard. Lucia already replaced them with Romano security. "Without consulting me?" Matteo's face hardened. "Someone entered your account, stole information about your wife, and disappeared after sleeping in your bed. Lucia would be negligent if she consulted you first." Adriano took one step toward him. Matteo did not move. They had known each other for 22 years. Matteo had buried a brother because of Moretti business and carried a scar beneath his ribs from protecting Adriano during a dock war in Marseille. He had earned the right to say what other men feared. "Do you want obedience?" Matteo asked. "Or do you want Isabella alive?" The answer arrived without dignity. "Alive." "Then let people who have not been compromised protect her." Adriano looked around the empty penthouse. Bianca had not merely left, she had prepared an absence. He remembered how often she had asked about the old ports, how easily she had turned conversations toward Isabella's inheritance, how she had laughed when he complained that his wife cared more about charities than expansion. Every memory now contained a second meaning. He had believed secrecy made him difficult to manipulate. In truth, Bianca had needed only to praise the part of him Isabella kept asking him to examine. "Find her," he said, "and when we do," the old answer would have been immediate. "Bring her to me. Close the doors. Let fear produce the truth." Adriano looked at the abandoned bracelet. "Keep her alive. Preserve everything she says." Matteo nodded once. It was not redemption. It was simply the first order Adriano had given in years that placed truth above pride. The audit began the next morning while Isabella attended a prenatal appointment. Sophia's heartbeat was strong, but the doctor warned that stress was pushing Isabella's blood pressure too high. "Your daughter does not negotiate with corporate calendars," she said. When Isabella and Lucia left St. Gabriel, a black sedan pulled away from the opposite curb and followed them through 3 turns. Their driver lost it by cutting through Romano Bank's secured underground entrance. Cameras captured a plate belonging to a vehicle stolen from a Vascari company. "You should leave the city," Lucia said. "I will accept protection," Isabella replied. "I will not surrender choice. Adriano spent 10 years confusing those things. Do not repeat him because you love me better." They returned to the estate by another route. A package waited inside the nursery, although no camera showed anyone carrying it upstairs. Lucia ordered the room cleared, but Isabella stopped at the threshold. The package was wrapped in pale blue paper and tied with white ribbon. It looked like a gift for a baby shower. Inside was a photograph taken through the hospital window less than an hour earlier. Isabella sat on the examination table while the doctor held the monitor against her stomach. Beneath the photograph, someone had written one sentence: "The child will inherit what survives." Lucia reached for Isabella's arm, but Isabella did not retreat. Her gaze moved from the photograph to the crib, the window latch, and the stuffed rabbit waiting exactly where she had left it. "Close the gates," she said. "Do not accuse the staff. Do not let anyone outside this room know we found the package." "Why?" "Because whoever carried it inside must report whether I panicked. Let them wait for an answer. While they wait, we find the door they used." One guard began collecting access records. Another covered the nursery camera with an evidence hood. Isabella stood over the threat until fear became information. The photograph had been taken from outside St. Gabriel. The package had been placed inside the most protected room in the estate. Vascari was not merely following her. Someone under the Moretti roof was already working for him. Adriano arrived while the security team was still searching the nursery. He saw the photograph in Lucia's gloved hand and went perfectly still. "Where is Isabella?" "In the library," Lucia said. "And before you enter, understand this. You have no authority over her security, her residence, or her medical decisions. Someone placed a threat beside my daughter's crib." "Yes." "Using information stolen from your account." He absorbed the accusation without resisting it. "What does she need?" Lucia studied him. "She needs the truth. If there is anything about North Quay, Bianca, or Vascari you have not disclosed, tell her before someone else uses it to reach the child." Adriano entered the library only after knocking. Isabella stood beside the window wearing the same white coat from the hospital. The photograph of her marriage remained face down on a side table. "Sophia is healthy," she said before he could ask. "The doctor wants less stress. Apparently, no one informed our enemies. You should move to the Romano residence in Geneva." "No, Isabella. If you came to give orders, leave." He stopped near the door. "What do you know about Salvatore Vascari?" she asked. "He has wanted Port Aurelia since before our marriage. His father lost it to yours, and Salvatore treats inheritance like an unpaid debt." "And North Quay?" Adriano looked toward the rain. "Bianca introduced the lender. She said their capital came through a Swiss infrastructure fund. My advisors confirmed the registration. Registration is not ownership. I know that now." "What did she receive if the acquisition closed?" "A board seat, 2% of the project." "And what did you receive?" He understood the real question. "The largest privately controlled port network on the Atlantic coast." "There it is. I did not know the lender was connected to Vascari. But you knew I had not approved the collateral. Bianca told me the trust consent was administrative and would be completed after closing. You accepted her answer because it allowed you to take what you wanted." He said nothing. Isabella turned toward him. "Do not ask me to believe you were fooled, as though deception happened in an empty room. She found the door. Your choices opened it." "I understand." "Not yet. But perhaps you are beginning to." He reached into his coat and placed a password card on the desk. "This accesses every private account, message archive, and off-book ledger connected to me. The audit team will have complete access." "Including information that could remove you permanently?" "Including information that could put me in prison." She looked at the card but did not touch it. "Are you giving me this to protect Sophia or to earn forgiveness?" The question cut cleanly through every speech he might have made. "To protect Sophia. If you never forgive me, the threat still exists." Isabella pressed the call button beside the desk. Lucia entered moments later. "Give this directly to the auditors," Isabella said. "Document the transfer. Adriano receives no promises in exchange." "Understood." Adriano turned to leave. "One more thing," Isabella said. He looked back. "You will not put armed men around me without my approval. You will not follow me in secret. You will not decide that danger restores rights you surrendered. If you have information, you bring it to Lucia. If I say no, the answer remains no. And if I believe the answer could get you killed, then you tell me why. You do not take the choice from me." He nodded slowly. "All right." It was the first boundary she had set that he accepted without negotiation. The password card broke the audit open. By evening, investigators had traced the North Quay money to Salvatore Vascari. Bianca had been promised control of Port Aurelia if scandal removed Adriano and panic weakened the company. The anniversary announcement had not merely satisfied her cruelty. It was meant to make the empire stumble long enough for Vascari to seize its most important port. There was only one problem with the plan. Bianca had believed Isabella was decorative. At the next council session, Lucia displayed the agreement on the chamber screen. Men who had defended Adriano the previous day now read in silence. Chairman Caruso removed his glasses. If the trust terminates its licenses, Vascari's collateral becomes worthless. So does half of Moretti capital, one director said. Then terminate it, another replied. Better ashes than Vascari ownership. The room divided instantly. Old men discussed employees as numbers and war as an accounting method. One proposed closing every terminal. Another wanted Adriano restored long enough to strike Vascari before the lenders acted. Isabella listened until their voices became loud enough to reveal how little any of them understood. Then she stood. No. Silence returned. The existing operating licenses will be renewed for 3 years, she said. Port employees keep their jobs. Pension funds remain protected. Active partners receive continuity guarantees. The disputed loan receives nothing. North Quay is abandoned. One director stared at her. You could force Moretti capital into liquidation and acquire the legal businesses for a fraction of their value. Yes? Then why would you not? Because a crane operator did not betray me. A nurse whose pension holds Moretti bonds did not invite Bianca into my marriage. Power that cannot distinguish the guilty from the innocent is only appetite wearing a suit. Adriano lowered his eyes. Lucia distributed the conditions. Independent oversight. Corrected ownership disclosures. Employee protections. No new debt against Romano assets. Permanent removal of Bianca's shell companies. Temporary transfer of Adriano's voting authority pending final investigation. Chairman Caruso turned toward him. Do you contest the transfer? Every person watched Adriano. The man he had been 2 days earlier would have threatened the council, challenged the charter, and treated surrender as death. Now he saw the photograph left beside his daughter's crib. He saw Isabella alone in the hospital because he had considered an acquisition more urgent than fear. No, he said. The word moved through the chamber like a change in weather. He removed the silver Moretti capital badge from his coat and placed it on the table. Matteo will serve as interim chief executive. The audit receives everything. One of his oldest allies rose. You are handing the empire to your wife because she embarrassed you? Adriano looked at him. No. I nearly handed it to Vascari because I was too arrogant to read what I signed. My wife is the reason you still have an empire to argue about. Isabella did not smile. She did not forgive him. But for the first time since the gala, she looked at him without seeing a man hiding behind another excuse. The council approved her proposal unanimously. Afterward, Adriano stood alone near the windows while members gathered around Isabella. She accepted none of their praise. She spoke with department heads about payroll, asked Lucia to protect small suppliers, and corrected a clause that would have allowed executives to keep bonuses during restructuring. He had called her quiet for years, as though quiet meant absent. Now he understood that she had been listening while he mistook noise for leadership. Bianca called Isabella that night. The number appeared as unknown. Isabella answered from her father's study while Lucia activated the recorder built into the desk. You looked beautiful at the gala, Bianca said. I was sorry to miss the ending. You did not miss it. You designed it. Bianca laughed softly. Adriano always needed an audience. I only offered him one. He chose to take the stage. Still protecting him? No. Naming his responsibility prevents you from taking credit for it. The laughter stopped. You think a trust makes you powerful, Bianca said. It makes you valuable. There is a difference. To Vascari? A small silence answered. Salvatore wants what your father stole from his family. My father bought Port Aurelia after Vascari's father bankrupted it. History is whatever the winner can afford to record. Then why threaten my child? Bianca's voice cooled. Because a mother signs faster than a widow. Lucia's hand tightened around the recorder controls. Isabella forced her breathing to remain even. What do you want? The original trust seal and the silver key. You will receive instructions. If you involve Adriano, the next photograph will not be taken through glass. The call ended. Lucia immediately sent the recording to the audit team and security command. She confirmed Vascari, she said, and conspiracy. She also confirmed they do not have the key. They know it exists, which means someone saw the case. Isabella replayed Bianca's final sentence. The next photograph will not be taken through glass. She knows where the first photograph was taken, Isabella said. That detail never appeared in the press, and the package is still here. Someone watched the nursery after it was delivered. Lucia understood. The camera failure. And the upper corridor. Find every person who entered it between the gala and dawn. Do not search for a stranger. Search for someone the house was trained not to notice. They reviewed estate records from the night of the gala. At 12:41, while Isabella was returning from the ballroom, a nursery camera lost its signal for 17 minutes. A house guard named Daniel Orsini entered the upper corridor carrying a florist's box. He had served the Moretti family for 9 years. By morning, Orsini had disappeared. Inside his locker, investigators found a duplicate cabinet key and 12 cash transfer receipts from a Vascari company. The betrayal had not entered the estate after the marriage broke. It had been waiting inside the walls. Matteo moved Isabella to a Romano safe house above Lake Arden with her permission. She chose the route, approved every guard, and carried the black case herself. Adriano was not told the location until she arrived. He received only one message from Lucia. She is safe. Do not follow. He obeyed. For 3 days, Moretti terminals worked beneath new guards while auditors raced Bianca's people through the servers. On the 4th night, Port Aurelia went dark. The generators failed. Men using Orsini's credentials entered through a service gate and fought toward the underground archive. Adriano arrived to find Matteo wounded behind a barrier and Orsini escaping between the containers. Then an explosion trapped 3 workers in a crane cabin. The traitor ran west. The workers screamed from the east. The old instinct told Adriano to hunt the man who betrayed him. Instead, he turned toward the fire. Let him go. Get the workers out. He climbed the crane himself. By the time the cabin opened, Orsini had vanished, but all 3 workers came down alive. Vascari's men withdrew without reaching the archive. Matteo survived a bullet beneath his shoulder. No employee died. Lucia found Adriano outside the surgical floor with soot on his shirt. The old Adriano would have called those workers the price of catching a traitor, she said. The old Adriano is why the traitor had access. Tell Isabella the workers are safe and Matteo will live. She does not need a report designed to make me look better. At Lake Arden, Isabella heard the truth without interruption. Was Adriano hurt? She asked. No. Good. Lucia did not mistake the word for forgiveness. The safe house had belonged to Vittorio Romano. In its narrow study, Isabella found an underlined warning in his journal. Never create a key that merely opens a door. Create one that records the hand attempting to turn it. Lucia explained the rest in a few sentences. If the silver key was used under coercion at the Port Aurelia archive, the Aurelia protocol would copy every connected device and submitted document to independent investigators, then lock the trust for 90 days. Vascari does not want the key, Isabella said. He wants my hand turning it, which is why you remain here. If I hide, he attacks another port and uses more workers as shields. I am not offering myself as bait. I am choosing the ground. By noon, Isabella had a plan. The trust would publicly offer to settle the disputed debt at Port Aurelia. She would enter the archive with the real key while a magistrate's team watched through a circuit Vascari did not know existed. The seal and transfer papers would be false. If Vascari forced her hand, the protocol would take his network with it. The council objected. Lucia objected. The magistrate called the risk unacceptable. Isabella removed every unnecessary worker and guard from the operation, but she did not remove herself. Adriano learned about the operation from Lucia that evening. He came alone, surrendered his telephone at the Lake Arden gate, and waited in the rain until Isabella approved his entrance. She met him in the study. The stuffed rabbit sat beside the black case, its repaired ear bent against the leather. You cannot go to the port, he said. That sentence is why you almost were not allowed through the gate. He closed his mouth. When he spoke again, the command had left his voice. Tell me the plan. She did. Adriano studied the map and pointed to an old tunnel beneath Warehouse 4. Vascari's father used this passage. If your team covers only the modern entrances, Salvatore will come through here. Lucia marked the passage. Anything else? Isabella asked. Bianca will try to separate you from the main archive. She will use something personal to make you move before the operation begins. Such as? Me. The baby. Your father. Anything she believes turns intelligence into emotion. Isabella watched him. You understand her well. Pain crossed his face, but he did not defend himself. I understood what she showed me. I never asked what it concealed. He placed his command codes beside the map. Lucia controls every Moretti unit. I cannot enter without your signal. Why? Isabella asked. Because protecting you is not the same as owning the plan. The answer did not repair the marriage. It did, however, reveal that he had finally heard her. He turned to leave. Adriano, he looked back. Why did you say it that way at the gala? That you never loved me? You could have asked for a divorce privately. You could have told the truth without making me stand beneath our wedding photographs. For the first time, she saw him struggle not to look away. Bianca said a clean break required cruelty. She said if I left hope, you would use the baby and the trust to pull me back. I told myself public certainty would prevent months of conflict. You humiliated me for administrative convenience. Yes, no softer description came. He refused himself one. And did you believe it? She asked. That you never loved me? No. I believed saying it would make the life I wanted easier. The honesty hurt more than a complicated excuse, but it also ended the last argument Isabella had been carrying against an imaginary version of events. There had been no noble reason, no secret sacrifice, no misunderstanding large enough to transform betrayal into love. He had wanted something and made her pain convenient. Thank you for telling the truth, she said. It changes nothing. I know. He left without asking her to reconsider the operation or the divorce. The settlement announcement went out at 9 the next morning. At 9:17, Bianca sent instructions to Isabella's private line. Come to the old customs house at 6. Bring the key and seal. No counsel, no Adriano. If you go to the archive, we take someone you love before you arrive. Attached was a live photograph of Lucia leaving St. Gabriel after visiting Matteo. Bianca had predicted the public plan and created a second location exactly as Adriano warned. Isabella showed the message to Lucia and the magistrate. We cancel, Lucia said. No, we adapt. The old customs house stood within the Port Aurelia security perimeter and connected to the archive through Vittorio's original freight tunnel. Vascari intended to force Isabella into the terminal from below, beyond the cameras covering the public entrance. The magistrate repositioned his team. Lucia replaced the seal with a lead copy. A transmitter disappeared inside Isabella's father's brooch. The silver key remained real. At 5:40, Isabella entered a black sedan with the case on her lap. Last opportunity to choose another way, Lucia said from the opposite seat. I chose another way 10 years ago. I waited for a man to notice what his choices were doing. I will not build Sophia's safety out of waiting. Lucia reached across the case and held her hand. Then we finish it. The customs house had been abandoned for 12 years. Salt clouded its windows. Rust marked the steel doors. Beyond the walls, container cranes moved against the evening sky like enormous black birds. Isabella entered alone as instructed. Bianca waited beneath a broken clock, wearing a red coat and holding a pistol at her side. 2 armed men searched Isabella, removed the brooch, and crushed it beneath a boot. Your father's jewelry was always terribly heavy, Bianca said. Your threats were more imaginative over the telephone. Bianca smiled. Adriano loved that about you, the calm little blade hidden inside every sentence. You seem very interested in what Adriano loved for a woman who claims to have won him. The smile thinned. One of the men opened the black case and inspected the key. Did you ever love him? Isabella asked. Bianca looked almost offended. Love is what women call the price they pay for access. Adriano was a door. He wanted admiration, I gave it to him, and he opened. The answer should have comforted Isabella. It did not. Adriano's betrayal was not less real because Bianca had performed her affection. He had chosen the performance because it asked nothing difficult of him. You did not defeat me, Isabella said. You found a man willing to betray his family and mistook being chosen by him for power. Bianca stepped close enough for the scent of her perfume to cross the space between them. And yet you walked out alone. Alone is not the same as defeated. You will understand the difference soon. For the first time, Bianca's confidence slipped. She raised the pistol a few inches, using the weapon to recover what the conversation had taken. "Where is Vascari?" Isabella asked. "Close enough. Then tell him he cannot transfer the trust with a key and seal. He needs council confirmation. He needs 90 minutes of control. By the time the council understands what happened, the debt, terminals, and access rights will sit inside jurisdictions your attorneys cannot reach." Bianca stepped closer and looked down at Isabella's stomach. "You should have stayed quiet. You were very good at it. You confused quiet with empty. Adriano made the same mistake." The rear door opened. Salvatore Vascari entered with Daniel Orsini beside him. Vascari was 58, silver-haired, and dressed with the restraint of a man whose violence was usually carried out by people in less expensive clothes. He regarded Isabella with almost paternal regret. "Your father and mine spent their lives fighting over Port Aurelia," he said. "It is unfortunate their children had to finish the conversation. Your father lost the port because he stole from his own workers. Mine bought the debt and paid their wages. That is the Romano version. Payroll records are less poetic than family legends." Vascari smiled. "You see why Adriano grew tired." Isabella felt Sophia move and rested one hand against the place. Adriano grew careless because he believed wanting more was the same as deserving it. "You made the same calculation." Vascari gestured toward the tunnel door. Orsini took Isabella's arm. She pulled free before he could tighten his grip. "Touch me again," she said, "and whatever happens next begins with you." Something in her voice made him hesitate. Bianca noticed and shoved Isabella forward herself. The freight tunnel descended beneath the customs house. Water moved along the edges of the old stone floor. At the far end, a steel door opened into the Romano archive, a circular chamber built below the port before digital records existed. The central terminal recognized the silver key immediately. "Romano beneficiary verification required." Vascari placed the false transfer documents beside the scanner. "Authenticate the key and sign." "No." Bianca pressed the barrel of her pistol beneath Isabella's ribs, inches above Sophia. "You are in no position to be brave. This is not bravery. The transfer you prepared is defective. The trust will reject it." "Then correct it," Vascari said. Isabella read the first page. As expected, the document attempted to assign operating control to a Vascari company while disguising the transfer as temporary debt settlement. She marked 2 clauses and entered a replacement authorization on the terminal. Her fingers did not shake. Sophia moved hard beneath her ribs. Bianca felt it through the hand holding the pistol and smiled. She knows her mother is afraid. She knows her mother is here. Vascari tapped the paper. "Sign, and your daughter leaves this place with every privilege her name can buy. Refuse, and she inherits a war." Isabella remembered Bianca's voice on the telephone. A mother signs faster than a widow. They had built the entire plan around the belief that motherhood made a woman easier to command. They had never understood that carrying Sophia had not made Isabella reckless. It had made every consequence clearer. "My daughter will inherit neither your war nor Adriano's," she said. "She will inherit the truth about both." Vascari leaned over her shoulder. "What did you change?" "The jurisdiction and confirmation route. Unless you prefer the council receiving an alert before we finish." He signaled for her to continue. Isabella inserted the silver key. The screen turned white. She placed her palm on the verification surface and entered the coercion code her father had hidden in the journal date. Aurelia protocol active. For half a second, nobody understood. Then steel shutters dropped over both tunnel entrances. Every device in the chamber connected automatically to the archive. Vascari's transfer papers, Bianca's telephone, Orsini's access card, and the active debt network began copying to independent servers. Vascari seized Isabella by the shoulder. "What did you do?" recorded the hand attempting to turn the key. Bianca raised the pistol. The chamber lights died. Emergency red lamps activated as the magistrate's team breached the customs house above. Gunfire sounded in the tunnel. Orsini ran toward the sealed western door. Vascari dragged Isabella behind the terminal, one arm across her throat. "Reverse it," he ordered. "It cannot be reversed for 90 days. Then you have made yourself useless." Adriano's voice came from the eastern passage. "Let her go." He stood beyond the half-lowered emergency barrier with a pistol aimed at Vascari. Lucia was behind him with 2 tactical officers. She had authorized his entry only after Isabella triggered Aurelia. Bianca moved beside Isabella and pressed her weapon against the curve of the pregnancy. "Put it down, Adriano," his eyes fixed on the gun touching his daughter. Vascari smiled. "Here is the truth your wife never understood. Men like us always choose the empire. Convince her to unlock the trust when the protocol ends, and I will return enough of Moretti capital for you to rule. Refuse, and by morning every off-book company you built will belong to prosecutors or creditors." Adriano looked at Isabella. The woman he had humiliated stood with a weapon against their child because his hunger had given Bianca access, because his signature had given Vascari leverage, because he had spent years believing consequences could be assigned to other people. "Lucia," he said, never taking his eyes from Isabella, "release my full ledgers to Magistrate Russo. Domestic and foreign. Every account." Vascari's smile vanished. The files would expose Vascari transactions hidden beside Moretti operations. They would also expose Adriano. "You will lose everything," Vascari said. "I already chose what mattered last time," Adriano replied. "I was wrong." He lowered his pistol and placed it on the stone floor. "The empire is finished, if that is the price. Let them go." Bianca stared at him. "You would burn 20 years for her after telling the world you never loved her?" "What I said was a lie. What I did to her was real. Do not confuse the two." Isabella watched him place the weapon on the floor. Surrendering the ledgers did not restore the dinners he had missed or erase the 400 faces that had watched him discard her. It did not turn betrayal into sacrifice. But this choice was not a speech made after danger had passed. It placed his freedom, his name, and everything he had built beyond recovery while a gun rested against Sofia. For the first time, Adriano was not asking Isabella to pay for the thing he wanted. Lucia transmitted the release command. Vascari struck Isabella across the face and reached for the key. In the same instant, Isabella drove the heavy lead seal into Bianca's wrist. The pistol fell. Isabella kicked it beneath the terminal and dropped behind the stone base as officers crossed the barrier. The chamber erupted into movement. Orsini surrendered first. Bianca reached for the weapon and found Adriano's hand around her arm. He pushed her away from Isabella without striking her. Tactical officers forced her to the floor and secured her wrists. Vascari escaped through a maintenance hatch before the western shutter closed completely. Adriano followed him onto the rain-swept loading platform above the harbor. They fought between rusted rails while police lights spread across the terminal. Vascari drew a knife. Adriano disarmed him and forced him to his knees at the edge of the water. For one suspended second, Adriano held the recovered pistol against the rival's head. Killing him would have been simple. It would have satisfied every rule Adriano had inherited. It would also turn the only man who could confirm the network into a corpse and teach his daughter, before she was born, that fear was the final language of her family. "Do it," Vascari said. "Prove you are still a Moretti." Adriano looked through the rain toward the archive entrance. Isabella stood beneath a blanket while Lucia held her upright. He lowered the gun. "No," he said. "For once, I will prove I can be something else." Magistrate Russo's officers took Vascari alive. Adriano returned to the archive as Isabella bent forward, one hand gripping Lucia's arm. "The baby," she whispered. Her water had broken nearly 8 weeks early. The drive to St. Gabriel took 18 minutes. Adriano followed in a separate vehicle because Isabella had not invited him into hers. Even then, with sirens clearing the road and fear stripping every other thought from his mind, he respected the boundary. Doctors moved Isabella into the delivery suite while Lucia remained beside her. Adriano stopped outside the doors. Hours passed beneath fluorescent lights. Matteo, pale from surgery, had himself brought down in a wheelchair and waited across from him. "Vascari is in custody," Matteo said. "Bianca and Orsini too. The ledgers reached Russo." Adriano nodded. "You understand what that means for you?" "Yes. There may still be time to narrow the release." No. Matteo studied the man. He had followed through 2 decades of expansion and blood. Was it worth it? A small cry came through the delivery room doors. Adriano closed his eyes. Ask me something difficult. Sofia Vittoria Romano Moretti was born at 4:12 in the morning, small, furious, and breathing on her own. The neonatal team examined her while Isabella watched every movement. When the doctor finally placed the baby against her chest, Isabella counted 10 fingers twice and cried with a freedom she had denied herself since the gala. Sofia's body was impossibly light against her. Her mouth opened in a silent complaint before a thin cry filled the room. Isabella pressed her lips to the child's forehead. "You do not inherit the fear," she whispered. "You do not inherit the silence. You inherit the chance to choose differently." The stuffed rabbit would arrive from the estate an hour later, sealed in a clear hospital bag, its repaired ear still bent. For now, Sofia closed her hand around Isabella's finger, and the entire world narrowed to that grip. Lucia kissed her forehead. "He is outside," she said. "He is not asked to enter." Isabella looked down at Sofia. The child opened dark blue eyes and closed one hand around her mother's finger. "Tell him she is safe." Lucia carried the message into the hallway. Adriano bowed his head. Tears moved down his face without sound. "Thank you," he said. He began to leave. "She asked if you would like to see Sofia through the glass," Lucia added. It was less than he wanted and more than he believed he deserved. He stood outside the nursery window while a nurse lifted his daughter from the incubator for 3 seconds. Sofia's hand opened against the blanket. Adriano placed his palm on the glass. He did not call the moment forgiveness. He called it a beginning he had no right to waste. The consequences arrived without ceremony. The Aurelia protocol gave investigators Vascari's network, Bianca's messages, Orsini's payments, and the attempted transfer. Vascari was charged. Bianca admitted that she had provoked the gala announcement, copied Isabella's seal, purchased Orsini, and used Adriano's affair as the easiest entrance into the Moretti empire. None of it excused Adriano. His ledgers exposed Vascari, but they also proved Adriano's own unlawful authorizations and concealed accounts. The council removed him. The criminal companies were dissolved or seized. Isabella protected the port workers and pensions, then placed the lawful businesses under transparent Romano oversight. Adriano pleaded guilty. His cooperation reduced the sentence to 14 months, but did not erase it. When an attorney called 14 months in federal custody a victory, Adriano ended the meeting. "A victory is something earned," he said. "This is a cost arriving late." He met Sofia once before reporting to prison. Isabella chose a supervised room at the Romano residence. Adriano entered without a watch, telephone, or guard. His daughter slept in a white blanket beside the stuffed rabbit from the nursery. "May I hold her?" he asked. Isabella placed Sofia into his arms. The feared man, who had once commanded an empire, supported the child's head with both hands, as though the world had become too delicate for sudden movement. Sofia opened her eyes. Adriano smiled and then cried. "I am sorry," he whispered. Isabella's voice remained gentle. "Do not make her responsible for comforting your regret." He nodded. "You're right." He did not ask Isabella to wait for him. He did not ask her to postpone the divorce. He signed every custody protection her attorney presented and transferred his remaining lawful assets into an independent trust for Sofia that he could never control. "Are you doing this because you think I will take you back?" Isabella asked after the final document. "No, if you never forgive me, she still deserves a father whose love does not contain a claim." 2 weeks later, Isabella's divorce became final, and she restored her name to Isabella Romano. Adriano reported to custody the next morning without asking her to wait. He wrote Sofia every Sunday about ordinary things instead of empires. Snow beyond his window, a book about trees, bread he was learning to bake. Isabella saved the letters beside Vittorio's journals. During those 14 months, she raised Sofia, opened the company's ownership records, and turned former security funds into restitution. The empire survived, smaller and cleaner. The marriage did not. After his release, Adriano moved into a modest house beyond the estate gates, attended therapy, and began supervised visits. He arrived early, followed Isabella's rules, and learned his daughter's cries without handing her to someone else. Trust returned in pieces too small to announce. An afternoon in the garden, a visit without a supervisor, one feverish night when he waited outside Sophia's door until Isabella invited him in. He never used those moments as evidence that she owed him another chance. On Sophia's second birthday, white roses bloomed along the Romano estate paths. There were no senators, cameras, or chandeliers. Matteo came with his arm fully healed. Lucia brought too many books. Port workers sent a wooden toy crane painted blue. Adriano arrived carrying a small horse he had carved by hand. One leg was slightly uneven. Sophia ran toward him, shouting, "Papa!" before he reached the garden table. He dropped to his knees and caught her. Isabella watched from beneath the terrace awning. 2 years earlier, she had imagined Adriano teaching their daughter to ride horses through the mountains. That life had not returned. Something quieter and more honest had grown in its place. After the guests left, Adriano carried empty plates toward the kitchen. "You can leave those," Isabella said. "I spent 40 years leaving ordinary work for someone else. I am trying a new system." She almost smiled. Sophia sat on the carpet, opening the storybook Lucia had given her. The stuffed rabbit rested beneath one arm. Adriano set down the plates and looked toward Isabella. "I know the marriage cannot be restored by good behavior after destruction," he said. "I know being her father is not a path back to being your husband." "Then why are you telling me?" "Because I used to do decent things while secretly demanding a reward. I want there to be no hidden demand between us." Isabella studied him. The man before her had publicly humiliated her, endangered the inheritance he ignored, and opened their home to a woman who used his appetite against them. He had also surrendered his power, exposed his own crimes, accepted punishment, and learned to love their daughter without treating access to the child as ownership of the mother. The second truth did not erase the first. It simply meant the first was no longer the only truth he was creating. "You are becoming the father Sophia deserves," she said. His eyes lowered. "That is enough. It has to be." "I know." She looked toward the dining room, where 3 places remained set after the party. "Stay for dinner," she said. "Sophia wants you to read the tree story again." Adriano did not interpret the invitation as forgiveness, reconciliation, or promise. He simply nodded and followed his daughter when she carried the book toward him. Years later, people still remembered the broken champagne glass, the silent orchestra, and the pregnant wife who walked through 400 witnesses without begging a powerful man to choose her. They said Isabella found her strength that night. They were wrong. She had possessed it all along. What she found was the freedom to stop spending it on a marriage that consumed her. The night he told the world he had never loved her, everyone believed they were watching a queen lose her crown. In truth, they were watching a woman set it down, walk out of the ballroom, and discover she had never needed it to rule her own life.